But okay, just noting that your fight has resulted in a number of gains for these institutions that you've worked in, for the people that you are able to provide the support to. Thinking of that, your own contributions, what would you say, like in terms of gender policy as well, and how we are seeing begin to shift different historical moments, different focuses in terms of gender? What would you say some of the key historical moments with the gender agenda that you witnessed are? And what would you say are some of your own personal key achievements?
Okay, well, I think I was very fortunate when I did those two courses at the Institute for Social Studies in The Hague. They were probably two of the first gender courses probably in the world. I think at that time the IDS in Sussex was also offering some programs, mainly summer programs. But in terms of courses as part of a master's degree, I think these things were very much in the early stages. Well, maybe in the United States there are already some, but I was as a student, I was really in a very formative period. And I think one of my important contributions for me was the way how I was involved in the establishment of gender studies at the University of the West Indies throughout the system, which, as I mentioned, now is on 3 campuses with academic programs. Actually, in Jamaica campus, they actually offer an undergraduate major as well. So I think that seeing that, that is a very important historical development for me. I think that other historical developments have to do with some of the things that were achieved in my country in terms of legislation to do with domestic violence, gender-based violence, etc. I think what was also important was some of the research that I've carried out. You know, my study, which was my PhD study, which was a historical sociological study of women in Trinidad and Tobago, I think still has a very strong place in, in Caribbean scholarship, as well as some of the other writings that I have done. But I think for me also, living through the decade for women, 1975 to 1995, 1975, I don't even know. I think I was just graduated from undergrad. So I was just beginning to get interested and involved in women's groups and organizations. But by 1995, by 1985, I had already finished my doctoral work and was so pleased to be able to attend the World Congress in Nairobi, Kenya. You know, that was really a historic event for me. I have so many fond memories of that, and that was a great experience. And then 10 years later, I was also able to attend the end of decade conference in China. And that was also another fabulous experience. I don't know if you'll ever have one of those in your lifetime, but if you do, you should definitely take it up. It is so empowering to meet women from all over the world.
Mhm.
And there are some men who come along too. And but what is fascinating is the diversity of the movement and the activities that were involved, you know, the programs, it was just mind blowing. And I think that those two conferences were two of the high points of my life. And I'm so fortunate that I was able to be part of that. I think another very important thing for me was me joining the International Sociological Association. I was introduced to it by a colleague when I was still in The Hague. And so, and later I was invited to present at a session. And then after that, it was so interesting because at the session, at the conference, there were a lot of people who I met before. And after that first session, first conference, I was invited to become a candidate to be chair of that research committee, RC32.
Wow.
Now, in RC32, we usually do a nomination like 4 years ahead of, yes, so you become, when you are nominated and approved, you become the vice president, and you work with the committee for 4 years before you assume the position of president. So I think that was another high point for me. I was still fairly young, and these older foremothers from India, Neera Desai and Veena Mazumdar, came up to me and they said, Rhoda, we want you. That was really such a shock because I was new to the organization, even though I knew many of the people before. Now, the ISA was and continues to be a very white organization, a very northern-based and primarily European, even less USA-based organization. And I was one of the, sometimes the only person of color or Black African-descended person in our research committee, and one very few in the organization as a whole. But Research Committee 32, of which I was a member, was a very nurturing space. It was led at the time by some feminist women who were committed to diversifying our research committee. They did a lot of things to encourage and support membership and participation from the Global South. So our committee always was the most diverse. We are probably the second largest research committee, if not the largest. And they did innovative things, for example, arrange collective housing at conferences at cheap prices so that people from, who didn't have the finances could get cheap accommodation. It was a very supportive space. And I think that's why I stayed there. I ended my term as president. I continued being a regional representative. Then I was no longer on the committee, but I continued. And then I decided to join the research committee on race and ethnic, where it's now nationalism, ethnicity, indigeneity, racism, nationalism, indigeneity, and ethnicity. And so then I began to do some work. Then again, I was nominated for the executive, which I didn't, somebody else, the committee did. And that's why I'm on the executive now. But I must say that there's a lot of commitment now in the executive and the leadership to diversify the organization, but it's not something that's very easy, bearing in mind the dynamics of the global economic systems. But I think that we've come a long way, certainly, from the situation when I began. So I think being part of the ISA, being president of Research Committee 32, and now being in the ISA executive, these are all very important milestones in my life. And then I have one more. 2 years ago, I was elected to the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And again, all these nominations were not by me, but by others. And that is a real honor. It's a lot of hard work and intense work, but it really provides an opportunity to influence the lives of women throughout the world. And to me, that is a real privilege. So I think I've been lucky. I've had a rich life and with wonderful experiences, but there's always more to learn and there's always more to do.